can we get some ideas? What is our understanding of retirement, and maybe what retirement planning means to us? Can we get some ideas?
Yes, sir. Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Yes. Retirement, to me, for me, what I know is when one is now out of active service, that means you have retired.
Okay.
Let's say, if you're a government worker, we know that by most of them, by 60 years, you should have handed over and then you go to rest. So you have retired like that. But if you're a business person, at a point, maybe you let someone come in to be the director as you go to sit at home. So at that point, you have retired from active service. So that is what I know as retirement. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. That is great. And very, very true. So, what our brother has just explained to us, it's what we are now coming to look at. How do we then plan that period, that process, that endeavor? How do we plan it? So that is all that retirement planning seeks to talk about. So, like he mentioned, he says once it's a point where you get out of active service or active work. So in our previous sessions, we looked at the various types of income that one can have, which we saw active income, we saw passive income, and we also saw portfolio income. So when you are on retirement, that active income, that income that you have to use your own energy, your own time to generate, you don't really need to employ your time to generate income anymore. So at that point, we say you have decided to retire. So retirement is a withdrawal from one's position or occupation or one's active working life. So at the point where you withdraw from your active working life, then you have chosen to go into retirement. So retirement is not tied to age, but it is tied to your wealth or your wealth. So we say retirement is a function of wealth, not age. But if you don't plan it, nature will do it for you. What this means is that someone can decide to retire at 35, at 40. Someone can decide to retire. But if you choose not to plan it and retire at the time you want, then nature would choose it for you, because according to the statutes of the nation, there is a particular age limit. And when you hit that limit, you are mandated to go into retirement. So let's now see, when will you retire? Because we are saying that if you don't plan the retirement, then nature will plan it for you. So if you have chosen not to retire, then you are going by the default, which is 60 years by the laws of Ghana. If you are in the forces or the military or the uniform people, then yours might even be a little shorter. So let us look at this chart. This is a retirement chart based on, depending on when you were born, then you will see how many years you have left to go on retirement. So for instance, if someone was born in 1964, then this class would not be relevant to the person, because the person would have been on retirement by now, by nature. And then if you were born in 1975, then you have 11 years more. And I've also translated this into the number of months of salaries that you have left to receive. So if you were born in 1975, you should have been 49 years now, and you should have 11 years to go on retirement. And that 11 years translates into 132 months of salary. So if you now take your monthly salary, which let's say it is 4,000, then you multiply it by 132. That is giving you 528,000 Ghana cedis. This is what you have left to work within 11 years and beyond. So when you have this data on your hands, then you know that it is prudent to plan, because the fact is that any salary you receive today, the now is in it and the future is also in it. We say salary is always a seed. So you have to plant the seed for it to germinate and produce more of its kind. Okay, so can we see our retirement years left on this chart? Is everybody in this chart?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yes,
almost
sir.
everybody should be here. Almost everybody is captured here, unless you are below 19 years. Then you will not find yourself in here. Great. So how will you retire after knowing when you will retire? The question is how will you retire? And the how is not about when you retire, am I going to carry my files on my head, or am I going to carry my files in a car, or am I going to be accompanied by an entourage? The how is asking, in those years post active work, how will your life look like? Are you going to be able to go on the vacations you want? Are you going to be able to eat the kind of nutritious food that you require to keep your health going? Would you be able to maintain the current lifestyle that you have acquired or you have built? So that is the how. Now we look at retirement planning. So what is retirement planning? We say it is determining retirement income goals and what's needed to achieve those goals. So when we talk about retirement planning, we are looking at how you can determine your retirement income goal. So when you hit 60 years, or if your aim is to go on retirement at 40, when you hit 40 years, what kind of income do you want to be receiving every month? So you are beginning to plan and project into that. And what do you need to do to achieve that? So assuming currently your lifestyle expenditure is around 3,500 per month, and by law of inflation, in about 10 years time, this 3,500 might have grown to around 4,200, which you will need to be able to sustain the same level of lifestyle. So with this 4,200 in 10 years time, how do you plan today that in 10 years time you can still be getting an income inflow of 4,200 into your life to sustain your health and your livelihood? So that is what we term by retirement planning. So that is you looking into the future and making provision for it. Now, in retirement planning, we have various aspects. You have the financial plan, you have the social plan, you have the health plan. Some can add others, but these are the three basic. The financial plan is looking at the economic impact on your life. When you go on retirement, would you have money to still sustain your life? That is the financial plan. The social plan is about your social lifestyle. Probably you are somebody whose whole life is about your office. That is where you have built your whole life around. So when you even move out of the office, if they mandate you to go on leave, you feel uncomfortable being in the house because that is not how your system is trained. So are you somebody who have built your whole life around work environment? Maybe your work is it's of the field nature. You like to be moving around. So when you go on retirement now, there's no opportunity to move around. Would you be able to adjust into the society? Probably you are somebody who doesn't have a lot of friends. How would your social life look like? So that is social planning in retirement. Then health planning. What is your eating pattern now that will guarantee your health in future? What is your lifestyle now that will guarantee your life your health in future? If you are a chain smoker, if you are I learned there's a new term they call pinch drinking or something. You don't drink often, but when you drink heavy. And I understand that is even more dangerous. So if you are somebody like that, you know that in the next 20, 15 years, you're going to have liver and lungs problems. So are you putting enough plans to handle those health challenges when they begin to occur in future? But for the purposes of today's program, we are limiting it mainly to the financial plan. The financial plan, because mostly the other plans will always depend on your financial strength. Great. Why the need for retirement planning? One is to enable you to retire early. Surely retirement is something that is assured. If you fail to plan it, the state will plan it for you that by 60 you have to retire, unless you are fortunate to have an extension, which you don't need anyway. But when you plan well enough, you can even retire at 30, 45, 50. and then you use your life, your remaining lifespan to impact the younger generation. So when you plan, you are able to retire early enough to enjoy your life. Number two is to increase your average life expectancy. So if you don't plan your retirement, you are getting to 45, 50, 54, and the bells are now ringing. You are now seeing your colleagues going on retirement. The person you used to work with in the office has gone on retirement. And it has now dawned on you that in the next 3 years, I am next. It will by nature affect your health, and your life expectancy would reduce drastically. If you were to still live an additional 20 years, you may end up doing just 10 years. And that is why we see our mothers and our fathers tending to die very early beyond retirement because they are not able to adjust financially and socially. Increasing medical expenses. The fact is that as you grow older, your body cells are dying off. They are no longer strong to fight certain diseases. You are generally becoming weak. So you need additional or extra medical attention. And these medical bills keep increasing. So if you don't plan ahead, you will get to that point and you cannot afford the medical bills, and you by nature have to fall on the benevolence of people, which these days hardly come. So naturally, you have to give up your existence. Maintain your lifestyle. So you have built a certain lifestyle today. Probably you are able to, by the grace of God, you are able to afford a 3 square meal. You have a vehicle, you drive around, you are able to fuel it. You have a decent home, you are able to maintain that home. So with this lifestyle you have built, by the time you are going into retirement by 60, would you still be able to maintain all these other expenses that come along with the lifestyle you have built, or your lifestyle is going to take a drastic turn, and then you then find yourself going to sit with the lotto stickers and being one of them? I have seen directors of government institutions, and when they go on retirement, they go into misery, and it is so pathetic. Relieve children and family from stress. Most of us, we tend to use our children as our retirement plan. That is not correct. The children have their own life to live. They have their own headache to handle. So our children are our responsibility. When they grow old enough and they choose to take care of us, then that is a plus. But it is not their responsibility to take care of us in our old age. So we tend to put a lot of burden on them, like some of us are also currently undergoing, which is depriving us from of the ability to hit certain objectives because our parents also failed to put in a retirement plan. So let us not transition it onto our children to also take advantage of tax reliefs. Now, this is something that usually is very silent. People don't know about it. But when you plan your retirement, there's something we call provident fund. When you choose going ahead, we'll look deep into it. When you choose to take a provident fund, you actually gain a tax relief on it. That means that the amount of tax that you are paying today, you can choose to reduce that tax by creating a provident fund for yourself. Just that the government will now lock that money. You cannot access it until after 10 years. But after 10 years, if you have saved 1 million, that 1 million is yours. Nobody touches it, saying he's charging tax. Now we look at some statistics. Some statistics, very worrying. So the first one, statistics reveal that about 75% of Ghanaian retirees depend on Senate or handouts from loved ones for financial support or as retirement income. 75%. And this is a research by Data Bank, and it is saying that 75%, about 75% of Ghanaians will retire and will depend on Senate. When we go forward, I'll explain to you why Senate cannot be a sustainable retirement plan for us. That is why a lot of workers will retire, though the Senate is compensating them, they are still not sufficient. Then the second one too is from Mutual Fund. Mutual Fund also did a study, and it says that retirement savings ranks eighth among savings goals. So when you take somebody's scale of preference, so in a month, when the person receives his income, and you are looking at his priorities in spending, retirement savings will fall on the eighth. So So it seems not to be a topmost priority for us, most of us. So I believe that our new definition of saving will bring that item to the first and not eighth. It also says approximately 6 out of 10 workers in Ghana are not saving for retirement. So once we are on government payroll and we hear that we are on Senate, we believe that Senate has taken care of our future. When we go forward, we see the limitations of it. But it is saying that 6 out of 10, we are all banking, we are not making plans or saving for retirement, and it is even much higher among the informal sector. So our mothers, our sisters, our fathers selling in the markets, it is even much more worse than that. And those people make a lot of money. So you see, of late, Senate is working to bring them on board. They move around, try to convince them to sign up, at least to create something for themselves. Only about 18% of Ghanaians are confident about retirement. The second study by Mutual Fund is almost correlating with the first study by Data Bank. So Data Bank says 75% depend on Senate, and this one says only about 18% are confident. So it means close to 82% are not confident. So 82 and 75 are very close. So as part of a research from an institution called ResearchGate, they took some motivation factors from people, randomly selected people, to know what motivates them to create a retirement plan. So one of them, they interviewed at Nima in Accra, says that when I was working, I was observing those who were in retirement. Sometimes you meet some of them and they look so wretched, as if they didn't work. So I acquired a plot and started this structure 3 years to retirement. So it means if this person was sorry, if this person was on a normal government payroll, 1868, it means this person started planning at 57, 3 years to retirement. She acquired a plot of land and started building. I built it to a certain level and completed it when I came to retirement. And I also had 6 acres of land somewhere, and I set up a mango plantation farm, and that is supporting me. So this is how somebody quickly put up a retirement strategy. When he saw how others were living in misery, he had to quickly put up a strategy for herself. Now, there's another one, also from Kwabenya, says planning for retirement can help one live long. This is because the money or pension provided by Senate is not enough. So you see, somebody is attesting to the fact that the money provided by Senate is not enough. So I had to use the little money to plan for retirement. I knew very little that if I don't plan well, I would suffer. You see, this person, he's attesting to the fact that he had limitation in financial literacy. This, I knew very little that if I don't plan well, I would suffer, and that could lead to my untimely death. The last person says sometimes the work you do and the salary you receive will either motivate you or not. Unfortunately, in my case, my salary was very small and could not even meet my monthly expenditure. This is where most of us stand. But the fact is that the retirement will come. So whatever you do, you must manage to plan for it. When you get to the 60, you will not explain to age 60 that my salary wasn't enough, so I didn't plan for you. So here we have some lamentations. People who failed to plan, they were now lamenting. This, as for the pension, it's good. But my only problem is it's not enough for all my needs. My children are still in school, and taking care of me with other needs can be very expensive. The second lamentation from Solomon. Solomon says, sometimes waiting for my pension makes me feel like I am living from hand to mouth. I don't think I will even be able to start a business unless I ask my children for money. So this person is now thinking of starting business when you have hit retirement. Though it is possible, it is very possible, the owner of KFC started his franchise when he hit 60 years. He used his retirement benefit to start that franchise. It has become a global business, but that is just one out of a lot. My prayer every month is that there will be no surprises that requires money or any emergencies, because frankly, I do not know where I will get the extra money from. So these are lamentations, and this is where we don't want to be. So let us see what are some of the pitfalls that made those people fall into those lamentations. Pitfall number one, depending on your children's support. So, like I mentioned earlier, your children should not be your retirement plan, because the fact is that even today, most of the youth end up getting a job around 26, 27, very late in their life. So assuming you even get a job at 30, you have just 30 years left on you. And now you are bringing on baggage from your parents. That is not going to be sustainable. Then relying on Senate contribution, which some have already attested to the fact that it is not enough. Those are the pitfalls. Starting too late. Starting too late. So when you start saving towards plan retirement very late, then it becomes difficult. There's a calculator. I'll do some examples and we'll look at that. Because when you start saving too late, the temptation to now look for very high yielding investment is very high. And that is where you end up falling into Ponzi schemes that will end up taking your money away. Upgrading qualification too late. So you are working in a government system, you know that your promotion depends on your qualification, your upgrade, but you are not doing it early enough. I know somebody who finished his PhD, and the month he went for the graduation, the following month he was going for retirement. So I asked myself, the money you used to go and do the PhD, and this same man was now struggling to finish his building, because now you're going on retirement. He was teaching in a university or a training college, and the college demanded the apartment they gave to him. Now he's struggling to finish his building. You have fetched so much money to go and do a PhD, which you are going to sit with in the house. What sense is in that, if I can say that? But if you intend to upgrade your qualification, it is good to do it very early in your life so that you can reap the benefits of it. There are certain institutions in Ghana. If you don't have a certain qualification, you can rise beyond certain ranks. So if you intend to go beyond those ranks, you need to get the qualification early. Before you wait, when you are 3, 4 years to retirement, you are not struggling to get the qualification. When you get it and there's any hindrance, then you realize that the money you spent in getting the qualification is virtually wasted. You are only called a doctor, but you are not reaping the benefit of being a doctor. Then not planning for your child education. So some of us, most of us, we tend to give birth, produce young ones, but then we don't have a plan for them until we hit retirement and they are still in senior high school. So this also has to do with family planning. But then our system doesn't really support us very well, because by the time you are getting a job at 27, that is when you are now planning your family. That is too late. But if you were in a very good system where at least by 2021, you finish university, you have a job, then by 23, 24, you have children coming. You can have some space to plan very well. So that is one of the pitfalls. I would want to pause here. Our next session will look into the National Pension Scheme proper. If there are any questions or contributions or concerns, I will take one or two, then we go into the next session. So, administrator, you can monitor the hands. If there is none, we'll continue.
Thank you for the opportunity. Please, you mentioned Provident Fund. I don't know whether you throw more light somewhere or that's just it.
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I will go into the pension fund proper. I will look at it.
Okay, thank you.
My concern has to do with something that you mentioned earlier at the presentation, that in our quest to plan for our retirement, we can have a medium, long-term, and short-term plan. And the planning to invest, the best way that you can have a guarantee is to invest in shares. What if I invest in the shares, then retire voluntarily? What are the consequences? Because for Vitus per se, I am not thinking about hitting the retirement age even before I exit active working life. I want to work and have people to work to pay me. That has always been my vision. So I'm not thinking about even reaching 55 in order to go out.
Great.
Can you take this opportunity to tell me some of the consequences of retiring early? What are some of the things that I will lose or I will gain as a result of retiring early and not meeting the mandatory 60 years or the 55 years that have been enshrined in our labor law. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So when you go on a voluntary retirement, usually because the thinking around, so let me just use that to go into the scheme. So the thinking around the scheme is for you to be able to sustain yourself beyond your active working life or working years. So if you go on retirement very early, around 40 years, the scheme is going to say, oh, 40, you must be able to have some other income coming to support you until you hit somewhere 55 or 50. Then we can begin to release this amount to you. Because if we start giving it to you at 40 and then you exhaust it by 60, who else is now going to take care of you beyond the 60? So the cap on the fund is that you have to reach at least 55 before they can release that Senate contribution to you. Now, the other consequence is that if you haven't built enough buffer or enough businesses to sustain you, you might get to a point and you need to get back into active work. That can be very distorting. So your planning has to be very, very accurate. So most people who retire before by 40, mostly they have a business running. Now you spoke about shares. Shares will always depend on the dividend payout of the institution you have bought the shares in. And it depends on the number of shares you have. So if you have quite a substantial amount of shares, it means when they declare dividend, you can get a substantial amount being paid to you. But if you just buy some small quantity and the company decides to declare a small amount of dividend, it means what will come to you will equally be small. So that cannot be sustainable. So just acquiring the shares will not be the end activity, but you need to also know how the earning potential of the shares. So the shares too, you have two earning potential. You are looking at the dividend payout and then the capital appreciation. So you can buy a share which costs maybe 2 cedis per share, and then in the next 10 years, the share can be sold for 8 cedis per share. So you bought it at 2 cedis, now you can sell it at 8 cedis. So you get some appreciation, some share appreciation. That's how we call it. You can also decide that, okay, for me, I don't want to sell my shares. I want to keep enjoying the dividends. But all that depends on the dividend payout policy of the company. Some companies, you buy the shares, they say, we are still growing. We have to hold on with dividend payments until maybe 5 years, 10 years. So for those areas, you need to get a financial advisor to take you through and get some very good shares for you to buy. The very good ones too can be very expensive. A company like Apple, Facebook, Twitter, which is now is it Black or something like that? X. So those kind of shares will definitely always be worthwhile, but you need to have quite a substantial amount to be able to get a significant returns from it. I don't know if this suffices your query.
Yes, please. Very grateful.
All right. So the pension scheme of Ghana. I just want to give a little background. In the 1960s, around just the early years where Ghana gained independence, most of the jobs were concentrated in the urban areas, Accra, the Kumasis, the Cape Coast, and our people would mostly migrate into those places to go acquire these jobs. But after a period of time, what was being observed was that when these people move, let's say you move from Upper West or Upper East or Tamale to Accra, you go to work there, they give you all the benefits, a home, a car, everything, and you are just enjoying life. You hardly even come back home and you hardly make a retirement plan until you hit the retirement age, which those days was I think 50 for women, 55 for men. So you hit that age and you realize you have nothing to fall on. You cannot go back to your village where you came from because you have neglected them, sort of. So people like that tend to become burden in the cities, and the government had to put them on stipend. And by by nature take care of them. So the authorities felt that no, we have to insist that these people will plan towards their retirement. So the pension scheme was a kind of mandatory saving system that was put in place. And the intention of it, as the name suggests, is a social security and national insurance trust. So the intention of the Senate is not to guarantee your future or your retirement or to give you a comfortable future or retirement. It is only to help the system, to help control the societal security. Assuming you have hit 60 and you don't have any money to take care of your children, it means that your children will by default become social misfits, and that will be a burden on the society. If you hit 60 and you don't have money to eat, you will end up being on the street begging and harassing people, and that becomes a social or a security threat. So the thinking or the intention of SNIT was not to give you a comfortable future, but to help control the social security, like the name suggests. So that when you go on retirement, we are giving you something small. At least you can feed from that to keep you out of the street. Number two, now what they do is that in the years past, they used to pay you the lump sum, a whole lot of money, and then still keep paying you monthly. But now the scheme has been split into three, which is the three-tier scheme. We'll look into it later. It has been split into three. The tier one is what you yourself contribute. The tier two is what your employer contributes. And the tier three is voluntary. So now when you go on retirement, it is the tier one they will pay to you. And the tier one is 13.5. And the tier two, which is what you contribute, is 5%. So this 5% component. So assuming you earn your basic salary is 1,000 Ghana cedis, and then they are taking 5% of that. That is 50 cedis every month. And you accumulate that by, let's say, 30 years. Okay, 30 years times 12 months. So that is 18,000. Then you add some interest, maybe that can come to around 25,000 or 30,000. They pay you that lump sum amount. That is the lump sum amount you collect. And now they have split it. Senate doesn't handle that. So you realize that most of you will have pension fund trustee, either Axis Pension or Glyco or something. So they will always pay you that lump sum amount, which is not usually big because you are just contributing 5%. Then the component your employer contributes is the 13.5%. That one is sitting with Senate. Now, Senate will not pay you a lot of money. They will not pay you lump sum. They are keeping it, they've invested it, they've put it's more like an insurance. So we've insured your life that when you hit 60, we'll take care of you until you hit 75. When you hit 75 and you are still alive, we will still continue to take care of you. And then instead of you exhausting the fund on yourself, they keep a portion of it for your beneficiaries. So your children, your spouse, a portion is reserved. So instead of them to pay the entire amount for you to enjoy now and that, they reserve a portion of it. So that when in case you die early, your children can fall on that and give you a befitting burial. So you see why the Senate cannot be big. Now the Provident Fund, my brother asked about, that one is what we call the tier 3. Tier 3 is optional. So you will usually not see it featuring most unless you are inquisitive to know more about it. The tier 1 and tier 2, they are mandatory pension schemes that out of your basic salary, your employer will deduct 5% and also contribute 13.5 and add, making a total of 18.5%, which they will keep for you. But the tier 3 is optional. So when your salary is paid to you, you can now decide to approach a fund manager. Example is Axis Fund, like the ones I mentioned, Axis, Glyco, Data Bank, they also have some of those packages. You approach them. I want to do a Provident Fund for myself because what the government is taking mandatorily, I know it will not be enough. So I want to create a fund for myself. And now the advantage, like I mentioned earlier, is for tax purposes. If you choose that you want to do a Provident Fund, the law says that up to 16% of your basic salary can be put into a provident fund, and we will not tax you that money. We will not tax you that money. Just that maybe if you are in the government system, it might be difficult to get it worked out, because mostly when you go to controller and accountants general, people are sitting on your documents. It's difficult. It's difficult, but it is something that people are taking advantage of. So that is the provident fund. You have to take the step to put it. Some institutions also have a mandatory provident fund. I spoke with someone who works at a district assembly, and he was complaining that if he moves out of the district assembly, he will not be able to have his provident fund. So I educated him. When you move out, wherever you go, you can choose to put yourself on provident fund. That one is optional. So it's not because you are working at the district assembly that you are benefiting provident fund. It is just something the institution has decided that let us do it and help our people to have a better retirement benefits. So the provident fund is also a lump sum payment. So that one, when you do it and you go on retirement, what the law says is that when you take the 16%, if you want to enjoy the tax holiday or the tax relief, you cannot touch that money until after 10 years. So if you are 30 years now and you start it until you are 40 years, you cannot touch it. But that one is also open to you. You can access it even before 60. You can pick it before 60. Just that if you start and it's not up to 10 years and you are going to pick it, they will collect the tax and give the remaining to you. So if you start it, you have contributed for 7 years and you want to pick the money, they'll calculate all the tax that they forgave you and collect it because you have violated the minimum years. But if you start and you are able to meet the 10 years, you go and collect your money intact. That one is not dependent on you getting to 60 years. No, it is your own decision and you have an objective for it. I hope the Provident Fund is clear.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. So, like I explained, we have the mandatory contribution, which is a tier 1, tier 2, and it is broken down into lump sum, monthly allowance, and then survivor and life insurance benefit. So this is how your tier 1, tier 2 is calculated, and this is where it gets interesting. Some of us we have a very fat salary, and because the salary is fat, we expect that when we go on retirement, our retirement benefit will also be fat. The reality of the matter is that the government doesn't contribute your Senate benefit based on your entire salary. There's something we call basic pay. So if you pick your pay slip and you look at it, mostly that is the first line item. You see a basic pay. And that one, the government is so smart, or every employer is smart, that they will set it to be low because the contribution they are going to do for you, it is going to depend on that basic pay. So when you see this one, Kofi has a basic pay of 1,500, and his accumulated allowance, so let's say fuel allowance, clothing allowance, Rex allowance, they will now put the chunk of the money in allowances. And you see the allowances is 3,000, and the total salary is 4,500. So Kofi goes to pay 4,500 every month, and expecting that his Senate is based on 4,500, which is not going to be the case because the law says that the Senate is based on your basic pay. So what the government will do or your employer will do is to calculate 13.5%, which is the tier 1, 13.5% on 1,500, which is just 202 cedis, 50 pesos. And then calculate 5% on the same tier basic pay, which is 74 cedis. So it means for Kofi's case, he might not even receive 4,500 because they will deduct the 74 cedis from it. So you deduct this from it, and then you collect that as your net salary. So this is how it works. So by the end of the month, your contribution for Senate is 276 cedis, 50 pesos. So that is on the left-hand side. That is the reality. But what most of us will assume is what is on the right-hand side. Because we are enjoying 4,500 net or take home, we think that our contribution is 607 cedis for tier 1 and 225 cedis for tier 2. So we are expecting a total contribution of 832 cedis, 50 pesos. So this is where we get disappointed when we hit 60 years, and that is the reality. So your Senate is not computed based on your net or your gross. It is computed based on your basic pay. Okay. So what do we do? Some principles in retirement planning. Number one, you must have a goal. The goal is, what do you envisage? How do you want your life to look like when you retire? You want to retire and still keep driving the car you drive, or you want to retire and sell the V8 and buy a smaller car? There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe when you were in active service, your work demanded that you go into very terrible terrains, and you were very active. You were very very smart with the steering wheel. Now you are old. You want a very small, simple car to be moving around, going to your friends. That is a goal. That is an objective. When you retire, what level of income do you want to keep receiving? Or what is your current income level? So that is one of the things you have to look at when you are planning your retirement. If your current income is big, then you know that, okay, even if I'm saving small, and I still have enough time, then I can hit the goal. If your income is small and you don't have time, then you have to really get some more income coming in. Number three is the nature of income. Is it active income? Is it passive income? Is it portfolio income? Active income, we have said that is what you have to use your own time to work for. Passive income is what you use other people's time to work for. Then portfolio income is what your reserve money is working and bringing. So if you buy shares, your money is bringing you dividend or share appreciation. So if you have more of your income coming from passive and portfolio, then you can actually retire very early, because you don't actually have to work for the money to come. Some people are working for you for the money to come, or your other money is working for you to come. But if your money is basically active income, then you might have to work a little longer. Okay, time horizon. Time horizon. What time do you have? What time do you have? Maybe if you get a job at 32 years, you're already behind time. So it means you have to save a lot and more frequently. You have a job around 20 years. You have time to yourself. So your time horizon is linked to the kind of risks you can take. If you are 20 years, you can do certain businesses, you can just try it out and it will fail. Then you start again. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you are 30, 35, 40, you cannot gamble with certain businesses. You can't do try and error. You have to get it right. You need to get a financial advisor. You need to put certain things in place so that there are no leakages in the business. So the time horizon is very, very critical. Your risk tolerance. Are you risk averse? Are you risk neutral or risk lover? That should also feed into your retirement planning. That will influence the kind of investment you put your money to. Okay. Responsibility. We have to take responsibility for our own lives. We cannot bank it on the government or the economy and say that life has become very tough and we cannot survive. You have to take responsibility for your own existence. So before we go into the way forward, maybe the calculations we looked at here, the provident fund and things, some questions, we'll take that before we look at the way forward. What can we then do? Knowing that Senate alone is not sufficient, what can we then do?
Yeah, someone wants to find out whether the Providence Fund, does it attract interest as you accumulate it for over a period of time?
Yes, it does. It does. So when you contribute it with the fund manager intends invest it. So usually when you go, they tell you the performance of each of the funds. So maybe when you take data bank, they can put your money into mutual fund or EPAC. They have a lot of I'm using data bank because I am quite familiar with their packages. That is not to suggest it to anybody. If you go to them, that is at your own risk. So they will tell you the performance, the average performance of the fund, and then give you a percentage that they feel your income will be generating. Because for that one, usually they put just a little of it into the government treasury bills or bonds. Because it's supposed to be a long-term investment, they can risk it a little bit by buying some shares or even doing some currency trading with it. Those ones you will not know, but that is basically what they do with the money. So yes, it accrues some interest. So way forward, we say you can start a provident fund. You can negotiate for higher basic salary. So workers go on strike, demanding increase in salaries, but you don't get the specific aspect of the salary you want them to increase. Because if they go and increase your allowances, then it doesn't have any correlation with the Senate benefit they are going to pay for you. So the increment you get, you are only going to consume it today, but that increment will not feed into your future. You can also start contributing early. That is very, very key. We'll do the calculation, you see the impact. Then contribute higher amounts. So if you don't have the time, you have to contribute higher amount. If you start contributing higher amounts, maybe you are just starting life, you don't really have a wife or a child, you can contribute higher amount. When they start coming, then you see you think of reducing it. Get income generating assets. Get income. So like we saw somebody's testimony. The lady said she had to acquire, she had some piece of land and she used it to start a mango plantation. Get income generating assets. Assets that will generate income for you. Plan to relocate. So maybe you are in Accra, you are in a big city where cost of living is really very high. You can start planning that, oh, by 50, 55, I should start thinking of drawing back to my home where life might be a little bit moderate to live by. In Accra, you can hardly put up a garden, a backyard garden, depending on where you live. But if you move back to Wa, maybe you have a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house, you can put up a backyard garden and it can supplement some of your food feeding costs. And it can even keep you active. So you can plan to relocate. Then plan your family. So I spoke about family planning earlier. Some people, we get married, we don't really know how many kids we want. They keep coming as and when God chooses. If actually it is God who chooses, but it is very, very key. As well, when you go to the developed world, most of them have just 2, 3. Even when you see these wealthy men, very rich people, they hardly go beyond 3. Most of them have 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, maximum 3. It's a financial planning mechanism. Like we saw the first day, the reason people used to want plenty children is because that was their source of manpower. Today, the manpower, we have said we should go to school and get jobs. The jobs are not there. So if you give that to them plenty, unless maybe you want to put a plantation, well, but it is up to the individual discretion. I want us to unmute and I'll hear some suggestions here. So these are two individuals. We want to know who acted smarter for his retirement. There's one called Joseph and another called Michael. So Joseph started investing at age 30. Monthly contribution was 500 cedis, which accumulates in every quarter of 1,500. Invested for 30 years till age 60 at 18% per annum. So where he's investing the money, he's able to get 18% interest per annum. Now, at the end of 60 years, his total investment is 180,000. So if you accumulate the 500, 500, 500 for 30 years, it will accumulate to 880,000. That's what he himself has put in. But because of the interest, which we call compounding, because when you put 500 this month, by the end of the month, 18% of 500 is added to it. So your fund becomes 590. And then you add another 500 to it. That becomes 1,090. That whole 1,090 is put in again. So your interest is still accruing more interest. That is what we call compounding. So because of the effect of compounding, Joseph has ended up with 6,525,606 Ghana cedis. That's just doing 500 cedis per month for 30 years at interest of 18%, which might be quite a lot for us to get in Ghana. We will look at a more realistic example and then we'll see what we can do for ourselves. Now, Michael, who wants to be smart? Because so Joseph started at age 30. Michael said, no, me, I want to enjoy life. So I will start at 45. That's 15 years later. But if I start, for me to catch up with Joseph, I'll do 2 times what Joseph is doing. So Michael said, me, I'll start at 45. 45 rate, he started contributing 1,000 cedis because Joseph was doing 500. He wants to catch up with Joseph. He's doing 1,000 cedis. Now, in 30 years' time, at the same interest rate, he is going to do 15 years. Joseph did 30 years. Michael, because he started 15 years later, is going to invest for just 15 years. Now, his total investment also comes to 180,000, just like Joseph. However, the difference now lies in the power of compounding. He made 6 million. Michael started 15 years later, and he's making only 868,000. Who smarter decision?
Joseph took the smarter
Joseph took a
decision.
smarter decision. Why? What makes his decision smarter?
One, the amount he was investing was not so much to burden him, and then he had a number of a longer years to do it at a relaxed rate. And finally, at the end of the retirement, if they all retire at the same year, he has so much money to be able to do something than Michael.
Great. Any other opinion? So the principle here is about starting early. Because Joseph did 30 years, Michael did only 15 years. Joseph started early. And like our brother said, he wasn't burdened to do 1,000 cities. So at least he started with 500, but he has a longer period. Michael decided to enjoy himself until 45. Now he has to catch up with time, and he has to do 1,000 cities. So you can imagine if Michael, when they were all 30, maybe that is when they had first child. Now by 45, Michael's first child is now entering probably university or senior high school. And this is when you want to now pull 1,000 out of your income, where you have to now be paying higher school fees. So you see the challenge you have created for yourself.
I want to find out, are they taking the same salary?
Yes, they are. They are co-workers,
Okay.
colleagues working the
Okay.
same salary. Yes.
Okay, then that's okay.
So let's look at a typical Ghanaian situation where you can hardly get 18% interest like Michael and Joseph. But in a typical Ghanaian system, even if you take treasury bills, you can get as much as 10% on treasury bills. But let's even say it's 7%. And that's what we have put here. So that is per annum. This 0.58 is just that it has taken the 7% and split it into months. So assuming you want to do 150 cedis every month on a 7% investment, and you want to do that for, so let's say you are 40 years now, you want to do it for the next 20 years. Okay, so 20 years in months, that gives us 240 months. So this is what you are getting. So in 240 months, your total contribution would have been 36,000. The interest alone will be 42,136, and you would have ended up by 60 years with 78,139. And this is aside what Senate will be giving you. So you can even decide not to think about Senate. 78,000, you can start a very good business. Maybe you can't build a house, but you can even acquire a car. So let us look at Michael too. So this person is doing 150 for 20 years at 7%. Michael is doing 300 because Michael has delayed. He will do for 10 years. So 10 by 12, that's just 120 months. Also at 7%. Look at the difference. You that started early, you are making 26,000 extra than the person who waited and started 10 years later, even though he is doing twice what you are doing. So assuming you make this one 500 cedis, so this is now real life situation because 7% is possible. There are investments you can get 7% per annum. That's for the whole year, 7%. So if you are doing 500 cedis at 7% for just 20 years, you'll be ending up with 260,000 Ghana cedis. 260,000 Ghana cedis in 20 years time. Maybe you can put up a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom house, probably. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the reality of the matter. Any question on this one? So maybe I'll share this calculator, then we can use that to plan on ourselves.
Can you mention some few places that you can get 7% investment? But my problem is, if you send the 500, is it going every month you are sending? How would they do it? I thought treasury bill, for instance, they will do it 3 months.
Yes, so you can do a standing order with the bank. The banks now, they have those provisions. You do a standing order. I want to do this facility. So you might not even choose to do to tell them that you want to do treasury bill. Just tell them I want an investment. I will say your salary, in your salary today, there is the now and there is the future in it. And taking this from my able director, which is a quote from George Bernard, we say, we are made wise not by the recollection of our past, but by the responsibility of our future. So this is we taking our future into our own hands and being accountable for our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.